everyone. I'm Maggie Ordon from Newfields in Indianapolis, and I've been working with the Association of Art Museum Interpretation to schedule today's event. And I'm happy to welcome you to the virtual convening on digital engagement in the age of COVID-19. So thank you for taking time and joining us today. I wanted to let everyone know that we will be recording this event and we will post it to AAMI's YouTube channel. Once it's posted, we'll send an email to all the attendees with a link. So you don't have to worry about capturing all the information from the slides or content because you will get that link soon. And you'll also be able to save the chat at the end of the event as well. A quick mention about participant best practices. So I think that's the next slide. Great. I think we're all becoming a little more familiar with this virtual landscape, but I just wanted to go over a couple things. Please be present and respond thoughtfully and respectfully. Please unmute your audio only if you are speaking. And if you could rename yourself with your full name and any affiliation, that would be great too. Or if you wanted to keep your camera on, that's great, but we totally understand that everyone's in their own space and places and has things going on. So whatever you're comfortable with works for us. There will be time at the end of the presentations for discussion, but please post ideas and questions in the chat as they come up. I know other members and attendees will love to talk over the chat while the presentations are going as well. So now I'd like to introduce the staff from Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art who will be presenting today. We'll hear from Stace Treat, Head of Interpretation, Brittany Johnson, Interpretation Specialist, and Neal Johnson, Digital Media Director. And the moderator for the session will be Robin Groesbeck, Director of Exhibitions and Interpretation at Crystal Bridges. Robin?
Hi everybody. Thanks so much, Maggie. We're really glad that you are here today, and we are hoping that this case study, while it focuses on one museum, Crystal Bridges, the reason we're doing this is to provide an opportunity for us all to share challenges and ideas doing interpretation during these challenging pandemic times. So just using Crystal Bridges as an example, but you will contribute many examples from your experience and from your museum, some of the opportunities, challenges, and ideas that you and your teams are coming up with. And I just want to go over kind of the way that the presentation will work today. We have kind of 5 distinct segments. Stace is going to talk about the before times, so examples of how in-gallery engagement looked before COVID hit. And then Brittany's going to tackle pandemic pivot, 2 examples of projects that were underway at Crystal Bridges when COVID hit and how the team has adapted them on very short notice. Thirdly, we're going to take a little break then and take questions and comments from the chat. So Sarah and I will introduce questions and comments, so please feel free to contribute those. And that'll be between Brittany and Neal's part. The 4th segment will be ways forward. So Neal is our digital media director at Crystal Bridges, and he works in our communications team. We're really happy to include Neal in this conversation because he's not working directly in the interpretation team, but he works as a partner to the interpretation team. And so, you know, like many of us, we collaborate across departmental lines, and we wanted to share that. But Neal is going to share many of the solutions that he and his colleagues working together with our teams are coming up with that will address some of the parts that Brittany and Stace will bring up in the first part. And then lastly, we're going to open it to the members who are on the call broadly for conversation. So you can add more questions and comments to the chat that we can address during this time. And you can also, we'll call on people who can unmute themselves and speak verbally out loud if you would like to. So I think the last thing I want to say is a round of thanks to the AAMI board for organizing these calls, also to Newfields and in particular Maggie, and also to Tasha, her colleague, for initiating a bunch of these calls and these topics. And then we want to thank also Megan Rust and Sarah Rasich for helping us get organized today and for putting these sessions together as well. Stace on our team has been really instrumental in organizing this session. So Those are the thanks, and probably more thanks are due, but we're going to jump in right now. And then lastly, I just wanted to share Precious Jewels by the Sea by Amy Sherald, 2019, just a new acquisition that we wanted to share today for a bit of sun in summer.
All right, my turn.
Your turn.
Okay, trying to figure out, there it is. All right. Well, hello everybody. I'm Steve Street, Head of Interpretation at Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art. And like all of you, remember back when, to a time of nostalgia, when there were things one could do inside of an art museum, such as touch digital screens and draw and interact in various ways with touchable activities. These are all things that, of course, all of us that are on this call have had to address in this age of COVID-19. I just want to show you a few of the things that we were doing in what we call the before time. We had several digital instruments in our galleries. We had what's called deeper dive iPads, a Salon table, which you can see pictured there. We'll look at that closer in just a sec. We had a really cool virtual reality experience featuring Asher B. Durand's Kindred Spirits that was in our lower lobby. And of course, we also have an array of audio guide programming. We also had a lot of cool low-tech activities that we pretty much had to put away, if you will. So as we move forward, so our deeper dive engagements, these were basically iPads that are fixed next to a work of art. And you can see on the far left, we have a Benjamin West painting and how they're placed next to it. The other two images you can see were what we have done now. We've had to cover those with a note saying that these are no longer accessible. Which was a shame because there was some really cool information on each of these. As you all know, we always hate to get rid of opportunities for guests to learn more about certain works of art or artists. One of the big projects that we're still working with that Neal's going to talk a little bit more about is we did this when we reinstalled our early American galleries in 2018. We created this really wonderful and dramatic salon hang. And one of the ways in which we decided to deliver the interpretive content was through a digital table. So you can see on the left, the digital table is in the gallery with the paintings beyond. The middle image is the touchable table screen, which is you basically just hit one of those images. And then on the right, you'll see it comes up with the interpretive information, the label text. Every one of the paintings on that wall are labeled with external text. So what we found ourselves in post-COVID now is that is unusable. It's not being used at all. So we've had to cover it with a key that basically only provides tombstone information, which is a real drag, as you can imagine, because there's a lot of rich content about those works. So we're working through that now, and Neal will tell us the solution we've come up with for the short term at least. We also created last year this wonderful, what we call a VR experience, but it's one of those opportunities where you can kind of go into the painting and look around. It's sort of three-dimensionalized. And we put it in our lower lobby in the space you see on the left, where visitors could put on the headphones, listen to the script, and enjoy the whole experience individually. Of course, now we're unable to offer that, although we can, and have been pushing it through our online website. We also added this year Carrie James Marshall's Our Town, a second, and we also have a third one actually by a Susie Frelinghuysen painting, an abstract painting. So we have 3 of those options now that we've shifted to online. So right now they're only online experiences. We're not offering it in the galleries. Then of course our CB audio tours and apps. Neal will also talk a little bit more about this, that we have a lot of rich experience. We have 2 apps that guests can download. One is for indoors, which is all the art inside. And then the other one is outdoors, which includes our trails and grounds and the sculpture works that are out there, along with a lot of plants and miscellaneous flora and fauna information. We anticipate, as maybe many of you do, and would love to hear more in the discussion later, about how we pivot with the audio platforms. And Neal's going to actually offer some pretty good advice and information that he's gathered as well. The last thing, of course, are low-tech engagements. These are always highly popular. We have this set of 3 paintings by the artist Joseph Decker, where he just painted these pictures of these boys on painting palettes. And we translated that into a drawing activity that's nearby. We've literally received thousands upon thousands of examples of these. And when COVID hit, we immediately withdrew them from the gallery. So now at the moment, we're at a place where we need to rethink that sort of engagement space and how we're going to utilize it. We did the same thing. Sadly, we had Hank Willis Thomas, All Things Being Equal, on view when we had to close our doors. And you can imagine the sadness we felt during the Black Lives Matter things, that people were unable to access the art. We had this idea, this activity where people could engage with his 4 Freedoms project. Some of you may know a lot about, where guests at the end of the gallery experience could infuse their own sort of feelings into the phrases freedom for, freedom to, freedom from, et cetera, et cetera. So those were taken away, and we were very sad that we couldn't enjoy that engagement any further. So all of our fun things and interesting tools that we used to use in the before time, we've had to pivot. So I'm going to turn it over to Brittany. Brittany, would you like to take control of the screen?
Yes, please. Hello, my name is Brittany Johnson. I am one of the interpretation specialists, along with States, who you just heard from, and Robin, who introduced us here at the museum. And like he mentioned, I am going to run through a couple examples of exhibitions that we either have on view now or that are coming up in the future that have been particularly impacted by COVID. The first one is After the Last Supper, which is an exhibition that is on view now. It's basically what you see before you, an artwork called After the Last Supper by an artist named Devorah Sperber. In this exhibition in particular, she reinterprets 2 original Leonardo paintings using thread spools. So the image that you see before you is made up of over 20,000 different thread spools. These pixelated and abstracted versions of really famous images, in the words of Sperber, enable us to reconsider how we perceive both art and the world around us. So with those kind of things in mind, or with that as the exhibition in mind, I'll walk you through the goals for this experience and then what we had to do in order to shift due to COVID. So for the digital experience, we wanted to really focus on Leonardo. We came up with a range of low-tech activities that focused highly on Sperber and her process. And so we felt like the digital experience would be a good time to give Leonardo his moment to shine. Because of the popularity of this artwork, the last time it was on view, it was a major hit with our guests. And then because of the location in the galleries, it's basically in a section in the very first room that you walk into in our permanent collection. We figured that it would be really popular, either with people who had seen it before and were excited to see it again, or who were just passing through and got curious and wanted to come in and experience it for themselves. And so we knew that the digital activities and the low-tech activities as well, but that the digital really needed to be something that would engage people while they were waiting for a turn to look through the viewing sphere and see the image right side up. So we came up with these 5 touchable activities. The first was a quiz about Leonardo. The second was a hotspot with images of with information about the artwork. The third was a video. The fourth was an exploration of linear perspective, which is something that Leonardo is said to have excelled at. And then the fifth was this image gallery with all of the instances that we could find of Mona Lisa throughout pop culture. So picture The Simpsons, picture Banksy, everything that you can think of for Mona Lisa. I'll take you through a couple of these now just so you can get a feel for them. I won't dwell too long. So the quiz, we wanted this to be something that was really playful, that was really engaging. Even when you got the question wrong, you were still kind of invited to keep going. There were 5 questions there. This is the hotspot activity, so you could pick a point throughout the image and learn more. In this particular example, this is what you get when you click on Jesus. And then the gallery, like I mentioned just a second ago, comes up with all of these images of Mona Lisa. So on the left, you have an example from a music video by the Carters that they filmed in the Louvre. So that's the actual Mona Lisa. And then on the right, you have a rendering of Mona Lisa in peanut butter and jelly by the artist Vic Muniz. And so basically, after COVID, or thanks to COVID, we've had to rethink what we would do or what we would offer people. And what we decided was that we would need to get rid of 3 of those experiences. Basically getting rid of the 3 that were the most touchable and leaving the 2 that could really stand alone on their own as well, it comes down to basically a slideshow. The video itself, about optics and the way your brain works, we figured we could play one after another on the loop. And then the Mona Lisa and Pop Culture Gallery could be created as a slideshow that could run on its own. So this kind of brought up some really big questions for us. Number one, what should we do with all of this other content that was created? Because as you can see here, all 5 of these things were fully fleshed out, fully developed, ready to go. You know, in the off chance, this was in March that we were being really optimistic. If COVID ended, you know, in a month, what would we do with this? Do we have the time to reincorporate it? Do we forget it? Do we put it online for people to take the quiz on their own? What can we do with this? But then also, and this was a much harder question to answer. If you pare this engagement down to just the 2 activities, is it still relevant to people? Of course, our guests didn't know that we had originally planned all 5 of these things, so they wouldn't know the difference anyhow. But what does putting something on a loop mean for our audience? Is the engagement level going to be the same as if you opt in and you play these games and you take a quiz or you touch the hotspots? So some kind of large questions that we're still hoping to find an answer for. This is the exhibition that's currently on view. I'm gonna pivot now to the second exhibition, Cross-Pollination, Heade, Cole Church, and Our Contemporary Moment. So this exhibition won't open at Crystal Bridges until 2021. It's set to travel, and then we are going to be the last venue. Cross-Pollination is an exhibition that was a joint project between Frederick Church's Salon Estate Historic Site, the Thomas Cole National Historic Site, and Crystal Bridges. It takes flight from Martin Johnson Heade's Gems of Brazil, and it extends outward. I'm just taking this off of the marketing copy, to explore systems of pollination in nature and ecology, as well as the interconnections in art and science and across generations. So the artwork that was selected to be in this exhibition flows from the 19th to the 21st century. So our goals for this experience were to focus heavily on the Gems of Brazil, because that's the anchor series of paintings. And we realized that in working through this exhibition, or in working through the Gems of Brazil and doing a little bit more research that Heade, who created the series, he went into the field and observed and studied nature. He bought specimens at the market, and then the final product that you see before you was really created in an enclosed environment in a studio. And we wanted people to experience that and see that for themselves. So what you do in this experience is you're going to journey through, oh, and that's a still from the, I should have changed the slide a little earlier. That's a still from the track screen. So what you'll do is you'll journey with Martin Johnson Heade from his studio in New York to Rio de Janeiro. And the whole time, there's a narrator who is Heade, kind of walking you through this process and talking about the travels and how excited he is to go into the field and see all these birds, see all this nature, and really get it down in his sketchbook. So when you get into Rio de Janeiro, you will be invited to go out into the field and observe birds. So on the bottom right, what you see is this landscape where you'll be, or the user will be invited to collect birds and flora and fauna. You can collect that bird's nest, that tree branch, that fern or palm leaf, the butterfly, whatever you want for your sketchbook to then take back into the studio and create your own painting, your own image. All of these images that we have given users the option to collect came straight from the original series. So the butterfly, those birds, those tree branches are actually present in the Gems of Brazil series. And then what you'll do, once you've got enough, once your sketchbook is full, you'll go into the studio and you will pull the images from your sketchbook and create your canvas. So we've given the users some tools to rotate the birds, make them larger, make them smaller, add 4 or 5, add flora, fauna, whatever they want to do to complete their image. And then once they're done, we will give them the real image that they would see before them. In most venues, the plan was to have this activity be paired with the actual series so that you can look up and see the painting, or you can see it side by side, and you can get a feel for what Martin Johnson Heade did, but also see your own creation. You can start over again if you don't like it. You could do it as many times as you want, but our goal was to keep this experience between 2 and 4 minutes. Obviously, this could go on for longer depending on how engaged you were and how much you really wanted to get your painting just perfect. With COVID, what we've decided to do is to remove largely that customization process. And so it becomes more like a movie. You're still going on this journey, but it is largely done for you, as opposed to you having the ability to pick your bird, pick your butterfly, what have you, and then go into the studio and create. We were lucky because we had a bit of time to redo this as an engagement, but as you can see, most of the work was already done. But with the time, we were able to make the experience bilingual. So now Martin Johnson Heade will carry visitors to Brazil in both English and Spanish, which we're really excited about. Not every venue will take advantage of that, but it'll definitely be available at Crystal Bridges when the exhibition comes our way next fall. So yeah, so those are the 2 kind of case studies that I had for you guys. And as Robin mentioned, I think we can take a few questions if there are any, or we can pass it on to Neal to kind of wrap it up and bring it on together. And I will let Robin take control.
Yeah, so feel free to add any comments, questions, or observations in the chat. It could be something that you're working on that's similar, or having to kind of switch gears midstream, or any questions you might have. So we have a question. Was any user testing done for Drawn from Nature?
That's a great question. So we didn't test this with our guests, but we did with a handful of what we call our core and extended team. So our core team being myself, the curator, Neal as digital director, and then some of the extended teammates who were contracted to make the experience come together in the way that you see before you. I definitely didn't create this, and I don't want to take credit for that. So that's kind of how we handled user testing.
Neal could probably speak to that as well. It was iterative, and in seeing some of these questions, it was developed in partnership with a local company, digital-based company that Neal can mention to you.
Yes, the local company here in Bentonville, Arkansas is called Prisma. They've been good partners with us for a lot of our VR components, as well as some interactives, video work. They're sort of a Swiss Army knife. They can do pretty much anything for us, and we really appreciate their partnership.
Neal, is it on a platform that can be shared, or is it like a fully design build sort of thing?
It's design built, but it is built on top of what's called the Unity platform, which is essentially the dominant gaming platform for what almost every game anybody plays in the digital realm today is built on Unity. So it has a lot of flexibility to translate between platforms. So if we wanted to export this to work in various places, it's a relatively short throw, and that's a benefit down the line. If we want to make modifications, come back to our original idea, port to other platforms, we'll have that opportunity.
And I think, Neal, you may be covering in this part, so I'm going to skip a couple of these that I know you're going to cover, but let's see. Have we measured interaction numbers for your interpretation programs online? So I know we do measure our digital touches, but I'm not sure if, Neal, you can speak to the measurement of programs online.
Yeah, in terms of, I suppose any way you care to carve that, we are looking very closely at the metrics. So whether that's Google Analytics and Tag Manager for all of our web-based media, whether it's our social media and YouTube and our live streams that we've been doing in the COVID era to keep our public programming active and available, all of our digital in-gallery interactives are at least tracking clicks so that we can know, for example, easily how many people are consuming one language or another, looking at attrition rates through the use of a given program and those kinds of things. And those are measured as a matter of course and studied regularly. And I'll talk a little bit about how that informed some of the changes we made in the Salon hang, which I'll talk about in a bit.
And then lastly, will we pivot to adding back those content pieces that we removed from the Last Supper once COVID is done, hopefully, and we're able to add touchscreen interaction back in? Or likewise with the Gems of Brazil piece, will we be able to go backwards and add back that user driven experience?
Well, I didn't drop into this in the initial presentation, but because this exhibition and this artwork was so popular, it's going to be on view for a really long time. And so we've been thinking about doing a midway shift in interpretation. The first half of the show has really been focused on Sperber's process and perception and sight. And we're thinking that the second half of the show will focus largely on the materiality, the thread spools, and working with that kind of material. And so hopefully if things change, we might be able to reconfigure and add in some more touchable elements. As for the digital, we had thought that when we did this midway shift, we could kind of take a look at some of the elements that were more popular and less popular and switch those out. So the short answer is yes, but also it's going to largely depend on where we are.
Okay, and I think we're going to pop back to some of these questions in the general conversation. So if your question didn't get answered, many of them are good platforms for discussion after Neal's part. So let's segue to Neal, and then we'll come back to some of these questions, and then you can put more in the chat as well. Neal, I think you're muted.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time and for being here, and Stace and Brittany and Robin for setting this up. I'm looking forward to sharing a little bit about some of the next steps that we're taking and what we're learning as we do this. We're trying very hard to look at this as an opportunity, and we think we can gain advantages, not just try to make up for deficiencies during this moment. I'll talk a bit about online engagement. I really want to try to take the focus back to in-gallery digital content, which is where the bulk of our work is right now, to try to bring the Salon hang, which Stace mentioned, back online as soon as possible. I'll talk briefly, just at a very high level, about the technology ecosystem that we're creating. You know, in particular, we're trying to, as I said, use this as an opportunity and move things forward at a good clip. And that's really forcing us in a good way to think about inexpensive, lightweight options that can reuse existing platforms and infrastructure, not break the bank, while at the same time making improvements overall. I'll make a nod towards future phases. I think that could be another discussion, that we could spend another hour talking about that, but I will hint at it, and maybe we can get some questions taken on that topic as well. So let's talk quickly about online engagement. Like all of you, very quickly we became an almost purely digital organization. And I can't take credit for all the amazing work that everybody did, really taking hard lefts and figuring out a way to keep the institution viable, going from a place that produced 800 public programs a year or plus down to 0 effectively overnight. And so we switched our paid marketing, as you could imagine, to existing assets. We have a robust YouTube collection. We had the VR experiences that were available in YouTube and on our website. And so really directing public attention back to the things that could keep us engaging and keep people remembering us and coming back and making sure that we're a part of their lives. We also worked very hard and very quickly to empower others, in particular our education department, who lacked a public program outlet, to empower them to learn and be entirely responsible for video production, so they could create at-home videos for the parents who were desperately trying to keep their kids busy while they were trying to work from home. They did an incredible job on short notice, and they just increase their skills day over day, and everything they put out is awesome. Check out our YouTube channel. We've got a couple of streams in there, a couple channels that I think are really worth looking at. They continue to do marvelous work and continue to think about how we'll move forward, probably in a hybrid way, so that we might get back to some limited public programs, but we're going to just double and triple down on these digital only experiences and try to find increasingly effective ways of doing them. All this was obviously done in very rapid, sort of real time. I'm sure you all experienced this in your own way. So thinking about the strategy we took into this pivot, we wanted to revive as soon as we got the opportunity when we reopened in early June. We wanted to expand where we could, make improvements, maybe even add content that wasn't there before, and so forth, and do this all safely, expanding opportunities where we could, and experimenting, taking some risks maybe, and learning a little bit, allowing ourselves that license to think of new ways of doing things. I had to include this very sad picture here, this poor iPad with this note on it that says, "You can't touch this." We're desperate like you are to get back to normal. So we'll share a little bit about our journey on that path. Let's start with reviving access safely. So we're in a no-touch scenario. We knew we had to move it to a publicly accessible platform. That meant the website. We needed to migrate the content on our media assets, which are mostly images and some really rich audio guide material that's right now locked up inside of the app that Stace mentioned, which, like all museum apps, suffers from the challenge of getting people to actually engage and download it. We get less than 4% uptake on that. So we've been looking for an excuse to sort of break that content out of that jail and bring it into a more public format. We also are taking advantage of the fact that QR codes are back in a big way. They were great for a while. Everybody abandoned them in droves. Now everybody's iPhone or Android phone can read them natively using their camera. So you don't need a special app. It's a really quick way to get people to engage. They can come upon a painting and be interested in it and then decide to engage one-off and not worry about downloading large apps and just in order to have a 5-second experience. So bring your own device is going to be big, obviously, in a no-touch scenario. We know most people have a phone in their back pockets. And we have free Wi-Fi, lucky that we can offer that throughout our trails and grounds as well as inside the buildings, or they can access cellular service. So let's focus in, take this one no touch scenario, the Salon hang touch screen. Here's a photograph of it. You'll see the pedestal has the placard on it, which is the temporary no touch scenario where we're at least helping you translate that a painting that's on a certain position in the Salon hang was painted by a given artist and has the title of XYZ. But that's just the beginning. We started looking at this and taking a look at the metrics that we've been gathering for the last couple of years. This is a very popular engagement in this gallery, as you might imagine. And one of the two challenges that had been identified before that we thought we might solve here, the first one was at this pedestal, you could really only have one group, family or other friends, engaging at one time. So in order to interpret this for somebody, you had to wait in line until somebody else was done with it. Plus, it enticed you, of course, it had lots of rich information and experience, but it meant that people might tend to get buried, their heads would be in the screen and they might forget to look up and actually look at the art. We wondered if we could improve on those two aspects and make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. So let's talk a little bit how we're doing that. This is an imagined, yet to be redesigned by our creative graphic designers. This is my terrible work here, ignore it. But essentially, again, using that idea of moving the content to the web, making it accessible on someone's personal device, easily via Wi-Fi or cell, and giving that just simple one QR code access to start in either English or Spanish. They might encounter this instead. And we're nearly finished building this out. I thought maybe I could demo a little of it today, but it's not quite ready, so I'll just have to show it in static form. And so now you can imagine if someone scans this QR code, just going back real quickly, now they can walk away from the pedestal and they can engage with the work of art that they chose from that initial screen that's presented after they scan the code, and then remain engaged at the wall, navigating back and forth through the interface, left and right, going back to the menu, and in a nod to some improved accessibility, instead of having to go back to a menu to switch from English to Spanish or back and forth, you can simply do that in a live way, and it's tracking your state at all times. So we know that we have family groups. We have a very high concentration of Latinx visitors who often present in multiple generations, some of whom are more familiar and comfortable in Spanish, maybe younger generations who are more comfortable in English. And we're hoping that this will create a little more dynamism. So the folks who are sharing this information, maybe sharing a device, can be switching back and forth in between languages efficiently. And at the same time, maintaining its experience. And at the end of the day, this becomes a template for how we can begin to repurpose the other content that Stace mentioned, whether that's in the touchable iPads, in some of these VR experiences that are hanging on the wall, and so forth. So broadly, backing up and saying, what are we trying to do to improve access and experience? First of all, easing the user opt-in experience. Bring your own device, QR codes, easy to access on the web, and no need to wait in line to be next to use the pedestal. Promoting close viewing of the art, breaking them away from the pedestal when it makes sense, and getting them up and engaging with the wall, allowing multiple visitors and groups to engage at once, improving that switching for language, and then the ability to reuse the infrastructure, the content management system, and break that content out of the mobile app and make it more diverse and more reusable. At a very high level, we're reusing existing technology ecosystems. So we're not adding much cost here. I think our SoundCloud license costs us $120 a year. We've put all the sound up there now. All the English and Spanish translations are in there. That will let us either embed playable versions of that audio content in web pages, or we can point them directly to the SoundCloud page to play, or create playlists that we can promote via social media. The WordPress is our current site. We developed a new page template that we think is, I can say with some confidence after some conversations yesterday, we think it's going to scale. We can begin to use this for more than just the Salon hang. And then always paying attention to the analytics and leveraging Google Analytics, Tag Manager, and so forth, and allowing Wi-Fi, QR codes, and the devices that people are bringing with them into the museum to complete the system. So looking forward to some beautiful moment where we bring things back, touchable things back online, whether digital or physical. What is that going to mean? We're betting that there's going to be a sort of bridge moment there where we may be allowed to put these on the floors and feel that we can do so safely, but there are going to be plenty of visitors who might still have a reluctance to touch. And so how do we think about accommodating them? We've been doing testing with some very relatively inexpensive materials, nitrile-based finger cuts, which in bulk can be about a penny a piece, which are disposable. We could put them out with some of the alcohol white pads that are currently in the Sperber. We've got waste baskets around the museum that are accommodating that. Also, these relatively inexpensive, you can get them down to about 40 or 50 cents a piece, these capacitive styluses. If you buy in bulk, they could probably be cheaper. And we've thought about, maybe we brand them, maybe we sell them, maybe they're given away, do we need to disinfect them? Lots of logistical questions, I think, to answer around something other than a purely disposable thing like a finger cut. But we feel, now that we've tested these, they're pretty much 100% accurate in terms of working on all our capacitive devices. So we're satisfied that they'll work from a technical perspective. We have to work through some of those logistics and cost associations. And quickly, this is the thing, we could talk about this for an hour in and of itself. There are other ways to trigger and control the kind of experiences that we're creating now or that we might want to create in the future, mechanical, gestural, ways to access audio that, again, allow people to bring their own headphones and plug in, or create directional audio that focuses sound in a particular area. All these things are on the table, and I could talk about these for days, and maybe in some future meeting we'll get to some details on those. But I wanted to list them here because I think they're important for us all to be keeping in mind as we're creative problem solving. And I'll leave it there, and thank you all very much for your time and attention.
Well, everybody, thanks so much for your presentations. We do have some really good, I think, general questions that will be of interest to the group, and Sarah's going to jump into and help facilitate this part. Liz Gardner was asking about if we are, well, actually, sorry, I'm going to start with a question that Sarah had because I think it relates directly to what Neal just said, and then we'll flip back to Liz's question, which I also thought was really broadly relevant for folks. Sarah was asking about Wi-Fi versus cellular, and if we know what the uptake rate is from our guests, and are we tracking that? And also she asks, how would one determine the capacity needed on a good Wi-Fi configuration throughout the institution?
A great question. Broadly speaking, we service almost exclusively through Wi-Fi, if only because our museum is in a valley. And cell service is spotty at best, even if you have, one of the better signals, I think, with AT&T and others. It's just not as reliable. But folks have their choice, and we offer our Wi-Fi with, it's essentially, you just connect. You don't have to give your email or click through a EULA or anything like that. We try to make it as frictionless as possible. I should have had the numbers handy. We do know exactly how many people log in, relative to the, in terms of a percentage of our total audience. We're not yet, we don't have the system that could track with heat maps yet. I think there are some security and privacy concerns we want to make sure we're really clear and comfortable with before we go there. And it costs money too for us to upgrade our system. But I think all that's in our future. We see people, using those kinds of metrics really usefully. And in terms of bandwidth, again, that's a kind of calculation that you can definitely do once you understand what the average uptake is, and you can multiply that by the amount of throughput of the content that folks are consuming on average, and then ensure that the bandwidth matches whatever the high water mark is for that.
I'm going to flip over to another question by Liz Gardner, who asked, and this is for the group broadly, all the participants. I see my internet might be a little shaky, so hopefully I won't freeze up. What about pivoting low-tech interactives and visitor response stations? What are people doing to convert from maybe a paper-based system where people are leaving comments to other systems? And how are people pivoting with low-tech? So feel free, if you have an answer, to unmute yourself and share it, or you can put your answer in the chat.
I can give one example, I think, with the Ansel Adams exhibit that's coming up. And I should be careful. I don't know that this was initially designed for the express purpose of overcoming a COVID era challenge, but I think I've seen other institutions taking what might otherwise have been I want you to contribute, so draw a picture or build something, and pivoting to the social media hashtag campaign kind of thing. So leveraging marketing around that and say, and for Ansel Adams, I think we're going to ask people to share their landscape photography and hashtag that. So I think there's ways to tie into the way we're already leveraging channels like our social media channels and that instinct people have to want to share and contribute.
And some participants are saying, Stefania is saying, we've used a platform called Streama. Kate is saying we use QR codes and something called Padlet. Kate, do you want to tell us about Padlet?
If Kate can't, I can tell you a little bit about Padlet real quickly. It's actually very popular in schools, and we used it recently on a big teacher online professional development we used. But it's basically just a browser-based whiteboard that allows participants to upload pictures, to write, to leave comments. So it's actually not a bad answer. That's actually a really easy and usable, as long as somebody can monitor probably the content. Yeah, that's really cool.
Deb, what about walls.io?
Sorry, I was multitasking and eating my lunch, but I think
sorry to call you out.
I think it's similar to Streama. It's a hashtag assembler. So you come up with your unique hashtag, you come up with your prompt. We used it for an exhibition of tattoos in Japanese prints, and we encouraged everybody to share their ink. And and then you can project that content and you can curate it so that you're filtering for what you want, or filtering out people who kind of bomb it and go completely off rogue and try to sell stuff.
Thanks. It looks like another alternative is Tagboard. And there's
I'll share, we're using Twine Social, just another one of those options in that medium.
Guillermo is asking about gesture-based navigation, saying that it still has some challenges, but Architect House in DC is a large-scale gesture-based experience.
Yeah, I think gesture-based is has become so much more affordable and so much more implementable by folks that don't want to break the bank. And there are some mainline suppliers of really sophisticated digital experiences. In fact, we work with IDEUM, is just one of them, Cortina is another, who are very, very hot and heavy with trying to create gesture-based platforms that can overcome this situation. They're remarkable. They always have this learning curve associated with them. It's one thing to ask someone to point and touch on a screen. That's sort of the thing that our society understands. How to learn a gesture that evokes a certain response or that is not purely playful or reactive, like Artech House, which is an amazing experience. I've done it. Is just something we want to think carefully about, I think. And are we introducing something that requires more for someone to opt in and have an experience? We'd want to test and understand that. But I've seen some really impressive options showing up out there.
So on a different tack, Abby is talking about looking for tips for creating engaging live virtual programs. She says, our members have really enjoyed virtual tours using high-res object photos, but I feel like they're not very engaging. She says it feels mostly like herself talking to the attendees. Any tips for creating engaging live virtual programs? And we can answer from Crystal Bridges, or if anyone has would like to answer from AAMI or the group at large.
Just speaking for Crystal Bridges, I think our education department is working really hard to develop that for themselves, and we'd be happy to check back, I think, in a couple of months when those programs come online, but nothing that I'm aware of currently.
We did do we did curator-led tours of the Hank Willis Thomas exhibition, for example, as well as the State of the Art 2020 exhibition. both at Crystal Bridges and the Momentary, our new satellite space. Those proved to be quite popular, largely because we had we kind of allowed our curators' personalities to sort of guide it, and it felt very intimate, and we got a lot of hits. I don't remember the number of that, but we plan to do a series of those actually for the Ansel Adams in Our Time exhibition that's coming up, and probably will continue to do that to some degree, just based on the popularity of those. And so I do think a bit of an informal and playful tone helps a lot in terms of making those engaging, I think.
And we've also done that by actually videotaping the curator walking through the gallery with the actual artworks. And so, it takes some time, effort, and production. We have a videographer on staff, and we're probably going to have to add another one in this current digital space.
Actually, I will correct one thing, that those tours of Hank Willis Thomas and State of the Art were completely handheld by the curator. The curator was the only person in.
Oh, I actually didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, they were there by themselves, and I did talk with them in terms of suggestions for things to do, but they were by themselves in the gallery, doing those on their personal handheld devices, which is also another way in which our education team has been engaging works of art in the galleries for students and families and things like that. They literally just went in with their own phone. I mean, it's like low-tech digital. It's like what we all do all the time. But it has, in fact, been a very engaging experience for a lot of viewers.
Thanks, Dace, for that clarification. And Stefania, I don't know if you're able to unmute yourself, but do you want to speak about Denver's program Untitled?
Sure. It's not a program that I run, but I think a lot of museums have these kind of Friday night, monthly or quarterly events where they're open, and there's so many activities happening. And we've done 2 during COVID, and they've been really, really great, actually. And in a way, almost better because you don't have to pick and choose what program you want to be going to. You can, it's kind of already curated for you. I was just looking for the link to our last one on our YouTube channel, but I'll share that. It's really put together by local artists, and kind of going into the galleries and doing really interesting things that we probably wouldn't be able to do without having it virtual. So it's been great. So that's a good example for us.
And then Melissa was adding that they've asked kids to write or draw to answer specific prompts during virtual tours and then share their drawings with the camera. So that's a low-tech way of getting people to engage. We have some Art by the Glass programs that have moved into the digital space that I've been participating in just as an artist, and making collages and then holding them up to the camera, and then the teacher, artist leader comments, or other people comment.
And I was going to add too that we actually lost our videographer right when COVID happened. So we had to pivot in another way, but we ended up, I work on our distance learning program. So we knew well what would work on screen sort of in the galleries. And we took those experiences where we're always asking participants to document their thinking in a very simple way. And we just built some asynchronous versions of that. And our low-tech way of looking closely at the pieces, we just did sort of digital slideshows with voiceover and prompts and things. But on one of the slides, we really made people slow down. We just used the Ken Burns effect from iMovie on a high-res image of the piece that we were looking at. And we just had it very slowly direct the viewers around as there was a prompt. So it was low tech, but it built on real experiences. And we have found that that's gotten some good response online too.
Well, thanks everybody. I think Deb's left a great link in here about their Asian Art Museum Japan Day celebrations moving online. And then Stefani has posted a link. So I'm going to turn it over to Maggie to wrap us up because we are at time and we realize people probably have other fascinating Zoom meetings to log into. So thank you.
Yes, thank you everyone for sharing all those great ideas and tools. And I hope you save the chat before you log off in case you want to capture any of those links. But as I said, we'll be sending out a recording. So thank you to our presenters. These were great ideas. I loved hearing about them. Thanks to all the folks behind the scenes and with AAMI. And thanks to all of you for attending. We hope you have picked up some ideas to try at your organization. As I said, you can save the chat and we'll send out a link to the YouTube recording, and we'll also send a survey, and we'd love to hear back any feedback you might have so we can make sure these sessions work for you. So if there are any topics you want us to cover, I know there were a lot of more tools that we could have explored, just let us know in the survey. I also wanted to let you know that there's another AAMI virtual convening coming up on Thursday, September 3rd. Staff from Newfields will talk about how we can foster social experiences and bring people together in the wake of COVID-19. So we'll be building on some of these ideas we were talking about today. And you can find the registration at artmuseuminterp.org/virtual-convenings, or I think we'll also post a link in the chat to that registration. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you in September. Thanks.